All right. Well, let's get started then. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the DebConf 21 Cloud Team BoF. I've got a few slides to start from, that we'll talk from and use as a little bit of structure to introduce the team and what we do, what we've accomplished over the past year, and some of the ongoing challenges or works in progress that that we're looking forward to. So we'll get started with that. If I can share my screen. Are people able to see my screen now?
Yep, looks good.
Good. All right. So we'll start by introducing the cloud team. My name is Noah. I am Noah M at Debian.org, and I've been a developer for over 20 years now. I actually don't remember when it started, but it's somewhere around 2000. I've been involved in a number of different aspects of Debian over the years, and for the past 5 years, I've been working with the cloud team, basically since it was sort of formally started in its current form. And then we've got a number of other members of the cloud team in the room right now. So if you guys would like to introduce yourselves briefly.
Hi, I'm Bastian. I'm about 20 years in Debian. I started with the cloud team also about 5 years ago, and yeah.
Thomas?
Hi, I'm Thomas Lange, nickname Mr. Phi, and FAI is also the software I'm working on since 2 decades. And this is the main part I do in the cloud team, because the cloud team is using the Phi tools mostly for creating a lot of images.
Ross?
I'm Ross Vandegrift. I've been around Debian since the 90s, but not joined until I started working with the cloud team, I don't know, 3 years ago or so. I help out here and there, but mostly end up doing sort of organizational, you could call me the team manager.
Okay, I'm myself, Thomas, aka Zigo. I've been a Debian developer for 10 years, and around the same time, like when OpenStack started, I became the OpenStack package maintainer. A bit after that, I asked on Debian Devil, hey, we got an OpenStack image, where can I upload it? And then that's probably where it all started. Here we are, maybe a few years later, having a team trying to make all the images look approximately the same.
All right, so let's take a look at what we've accomplished as a team over the past year or so. Obviously, the big thing is the Bullseye release. The team basically, we had been building Bullseye images for various clouds. We'll get into some details about which clouds and what the images are and things like that in a bit. But we've been building them for quite a while ahead of the Bullseye release. So basically, once Bullseye was officially formally released, we had everything in place, and so we were able to get our official images published really quickly. Right after the release happened. I think ideally we'd do it even quicker, like the same day, as with coordination with the release team and things like that. Maybe we'll be able to do that sort of thing for Bookworm. but in general, the release went really well. We had everything that we needed in place, and Bullseye at this point is available on AWS, Microsoft Azure. It's available for OpenStack, and we publish images supporting multiple different architectures. So that's out there and that's released. Over the past year, we've also been maintaining stable and old stable and even LTS images for multiple different clouds. So basically, the idea is anytime a kernel package or a libc or anything along those lines, that sort of stuff changes, we'll regenerate these the images and make them available on the cloud, make them available for download, and that sort of thing. With the idea being that you can start deploying, you can move your cloud infrastructure over to these new images and launch them and be up to date with security at launch time. So we try to get those images updated very quickly when those sorts of core packages change. Other things that we've been working on is management of various resources on public cloud services. So ci.debian.net runs a bunch of stuff on AWS. AWS also hosts an archive mirror using the CloudFront CDN. And so we manage the accounts that where those services all run. There are other services such as this like the Debian Jitsi that runs on a cloud service. And then we also we maintain a number of packages for integration of instances and Debian systems with various clouds, as well as the OpenStack packages themselves, which allow you to run a private cloud on Debian systems on bare metal and host your own sort of cloud services. Zigo, if you'd like to talk a little bit about the state of the of OpenStack infrastructure packaging in Debian, that would be good. There was a talk already given by Zigo earlier in DebConf where he went into more detail about this. But for people who missed that, he can give a little bit of a recap of what we talked about.
Right now? Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, I was previously maintaining those packages for my employer, but not really running them myself. Back 2 releases later, I believe that the OpenStack packages have never been in such a good shape as they are released in Bullseye last Saturday. That's also thanks to the release team that allowed so many fixes during this very, very long freeze. So that's what I'm convinced. Hopefully people will share the same opinion.
Cool. Other things that we do as a team, we publish our images to various cloud marketplaces. These are the sorts of these are sort of one of the primary tools that these various commercial cloud services provide for discovering images and distribution content and things like that. So we try to make sure that all of that stuff is up to date. We have varying amounts of automation in place for this, depending on the facilities that the services themselves provide for automating updates for this. It's a little bit manual in some cases, but we try to keep things up to date. We publish our VM images, as well as more recently we've worked with AWS and facilitated sort of availability of an AWS account and that sort of administrative infrastructure to allow the Debian Docker image maintainers to publish their container images to the Amazon ECR public registry, in addition to Docker Hub. So these are the exact same images generated at the same time, published to ECR as well as to Docker Hub. So that provides a sort of an additional resource for pulling container images if you need it, so you don't have the sort of single point of failure pulling from Docker Hub or anything along those lines. And then some of the sort of management, like we have a there's a formal delegation from the DPL to a couple of members of the cloud team that allow us to give us the authority to engage with various commercial cloud providers at an organizational level to manage accounts on the providers and resources within them. So we've got some infrastructure, as I mentioned earlier, ci.debian.net that runs in an AWS account. We manage those accounts and handle provisioning resources within them for whoever needs access to this sort of thing. This is an area that we'd actually like to expand. We'd like to make some of these cloud resources available to more teams within Debian. At the moment, we don't have all of the details of exactly how to do that organizationally worked out yet, but and there's some, a few technical things, but the technical stuff is easier, really. It's the organizational stuff that's a little bit of a challenge for us to deal with so far. So we'll talk a little bit about the some of the automation that we've got around around building images for these various different cloud environments, because there's quite a bit that goes on every day that we use to test and validate the work that we do. So we generate 30 cloud images each day. All this is driven by excuse me, by Salsa, and it generates images it can generate images for every one of our supported distributions right now. So we're currently generating Old Stable, Buster, Bullseye, testing. Actually, we aren't generating testing just yet because there's a new testing. We need to expand this, and SID images every day, and we're generating them for AMD 64, for ARM 64 in some cases, and even for PowerPC 64 in some cases, because there are actually there's at least one PowerPC 64 cloud out there somewhere. The images are downloadable, so you can download the things that we generate, but also if you're using one of the commercial services, we publish directly to those, and the images are public, so you can run a fresh, up-to-date SID image if you have something that you're testing and want to see how it behaves on a SID VM or something like that. You can run this on AWS or on Azure, or you can even download it and run it yourself with QEMU. And then in addition to the daily images, we have release images that we publish. These are the ones that we sort of intend to be production ready. These are stable long-term. We don't ever deregister them or take them away. We expect them to work when, and we publish these on a much slower cadence. They're really published only when we need to. So when there's a point release, or as I mentioned earlier, when one of the core packages like the kernel or libc or something like that changes, anything that would require you to reboot to make sure you've fully applied the change, we publish that as a new image, basically. Again, these are available for download if you want to, and again, they're also registered with the commercial cloud services. So that's sort of what we've been doing, and what we what we've accomplished over the past year. We've got some stuff that we're still working on that we haven't finished yet, or that's still sort of in progress. We've got a web application that we're trying to get usable. It's nice. It really shows promise, but it's not ready yet. And this is an area where interested people could definitely contribute. This is a Python Flask application that is the idea is that it's sort of a single interface for finding the latest cloud image for whatever provider you might be using. So if you're interested in, the current Bullseye AMD 64 OpenStack image and you want to download it, this is where you'd find it. And it's the idea is that it gives you a nice user interface, a nice structured machine readable like JSON interface as well, allowing you to find the content that you're looking for. Like I said, it's kind of, it shows some promise. It's there. It doesn't do anything yet. Like it doesn't automatically keep itself up to date with the images that we generate. So it's really always out of date. And then there's some usability issues as well. And so it's unfortunately it sort of gets developed in like fits and starts where the people that work on it will do some work that is really great and then not follow up, and most of the active members of the team are not working on this on a daily basis, and so it's just really never built up any momentum, and it just ends up sort of, it's always almost ready. Another issue that we need to work out, I think, actually as a distribution in general, is the future of DH Client from ISC, which has been basically abandoned by upstream. It's used by if up down. It's the default in our cloud images today, but it's probably not what we want going forward. And so, it may be the case that we want to switch to something along the lines of maybe Network Manager with its built-in DHCP client, or maybe Systemd Network D, something along those lines. This is something that I've been looking at a little bit personally. I've got some ideas and that sort of thing. I don't know if other people, if the F up down maintainers have been thinking about what to do for the future, but this is going to be an issue before the bookworm release.
If I may, there's an if up down ng talk at this DebConf. Might be worth looking at it.
Yes, indeed. And then another issue that keeps coming up at our annual team sprints, the cloud providers they're constantly adding new APIs. Like every month, they're adding multiple new APIs. And so over time, the API client packages that we ship within Debian stable are getting further and further out of date. And the cloud providers really, and their customers, really want us to be keeping our packages up to date so that the users of these packages have easy access to the latest APIs and things like that. And so we've engaged with the stable release team. They've indicated that it's that they will let us update these packages in a point release. But we need to show that it's safe to do. Like, we need to have done a pretty thorough set of tests. We need to show that we're not introducing any regressions, and that they are really additive. We're not taking anything away. We're just adding support for these new APIs. But it's super time consuming to do it, and even then, it's not as fast as the cloud providers would like. So we have a number of these API clients, the Python Botto core packages. There's the AWS CLI package. There are packages for the for the Google GCP APIs and things like that. And in stable, they're just way out of date, and the cloud providers don't even really, they don't want people using these old versions. So coming up with a better plan for this and a better way to provide up-to-date packages is something that we've just never figured out a good path for. Things like backports are tempting, but in some cases that's not even as fast as the cloud providers would like. But maybe if that's the best we can do, it is. It hasn't happened yet. Like I said, it's labor intensive, and we just haven't. Nobody's really doing that work right now. So here are some URLs, our mailing list, and our IRC channel. We're reasonably active on IRC and responsive on the mailing list. So if you're at all interested in using our stuff or helping to work on it in any capacity, please do get in touch. And at this point, I think if people have questions or things that they'd like to talk about, we can jump into some stuff on the Etherpad or on IRC.
Looks like we have 2 questions on the pad. I'll read the first one to start. Could we think of a few scenarios for which it seems worthwhile to somehow interlink the efforts in Debian blends with public clouds? To mind come images dedicated to complete particular sets of workflows, and orchestration of public data sets. For example, AWS already accommodates quite a few of these for bioinformatics. So I have some thoughts on this sort of question. We get these sorts of questions occasionally that the workflow the cloud team has built in terms of building ready-to-go images for Debian is nearby other use cases that other teams have. Folks are building images for Raspberry Pis. Lots of folks have workflows where they're building sort of pre-set up, pre-configured special purpose images. In some cases, we've kind of built our tools so that folks could extend them. Maybe we haven't done so well enough. I'm not sure how many folks are doing that. So that would be interesting to have feedback about. If you try to extend our tools for your use case and it doesn't work, that would be interesting to know. One challenge is I don't think anybody on the cloud team is engaged in any of those projects really. The other issue is sometimes I think that there's sort of there's a technical knee-jerk belief that, well, these workflows are similar. Wouldn't it be great to sort of refactor them and remove some effort? And I think that might be true, but I'm also sort of skeptical for human reasons. Oftentimes other folks have special purpose tools that they've developed for these workflows that don't play so clearly with our tools. And so while it might sometimes seem intuitive that there's some work in common, I think in practice, for the fact that people have tools and like them, I think it's a little bit more complicated than just identifying the similar workflow. That's not to say that it couldn't be a successful effort. I think somebody would need to go through and sort of give it a shot. And I don't think that that's been done too many times. Other folks have thoughts on the question about blends and our image process?
I have definitely felt in the past like that the cloud stuff, that there's clear overlap between what we're doing with the cloud image generation and what the blends people are doing. Like in a way, you could really think of you could think of cloud or even like the cloud provider images as being a blend. Like there's an AWS blend or something like that for running on Amazon EC2, or there's an Azure blend, or there's a OpenStack blend, and it's very, very similar. And so it could be that there's opportunity to share some tooling and things like that. I think your point, Ross, about the sort of just the mindset and how and when we do releases, maybe it doesn't, maybe I don't want to say it doesn't line up, but it might just be people might need to adapt a little bit.
So on my side, it's been years I've been thinking about doing a pure blend for OpenStack, where we would have a partial repository of the Debian repository, where there would be only the packages needed to run OpenStack. This way you could just have a CD with all the packages, and that would make your own repository without the need to have any internet access. That's just an idea, and I never had time to implement it.
Any other thoughts on that question, or I'll go and read the next one? All right, question 2. This has certainly come up before. Should there be a Debian run OpenStack instance? Motivations: access to less common platforms, also for non-developers. Maybe even have buildds spawn images in the cloud when special hardware like CUDA or ROCm is required. Experiment with more complex workflows that spawn several instances on multiple machines for parallelization with no expense for commercial providers. Diego, I know that this is something you've also thought about for a number of years. So
about 8 years, if I remember well. So to tell the truth, I would have been ready about 2 years ago to you give me some hardware, and then in a week I can have everything up. We've talked with a cloud provider that would give us hardware and hosting space to do that. We've been discussing that with them. It's been a year already, and we have only been waiting so far that they would do what they promised. So it never happened. I would have preferred that they just say, no, we can't, or something, or we are too busy, because we would have asked somebody else. So I'm not naming that cloud provider, but I'm not really happy of them making us wait for a whole year already. If you're a hosting provider and you have a lot of money, then please get in touch. Just to give an idea to folks about how much it would cost, I think maybe the entrance ticket would be maybe 100 to 200,000 US dollar to have serious hardware to play with. Because if we don't have a safe cluster and some compute machines and so on, then it's just not worth doing the effort.
Yeah, like I said earlier in my talk, it's getting access of any sort to cloud resources is much more of an administrative thing than any kind of technical thing. Like the technical stuff we can deal with pretty easily in all these cases, but administrative stuff just it's a pain.
The other thing is that maybe Debian would have some money to do it, like buying the hardware and collocate it somewhere. Though I've asked multiple times the DSA about it, and so DSA are the Debian system administrator, these folks that are running the Debian infrastructures. And they've told multiple times that they are not interested in running OpenStack, even if I and other people on the team would do it, probably because they you need years of experience literally to operate OpenStack, even though it takes probably a few minutes to just use it. And then it makes a lot of sense probably that we do it without their help or support. That's the state of things currently. Hopefully We'll get there someday.
And so one of the other possibilities, and something that we would like, I touched on it a little bit, is getting some sort of expanded access for Debian developers on some public cloud service. I mentioned that the ci.debian.net stuff currently runs on a commercial cloud, and if you could run a like I said, like a SID VM or a testing VM or something like that, and do some work. Use this as a private porter environment or test environment, or the reproducible build stuff. That team is doing regular rebuilds of packages in the archive and things like that. And if we could just give them access to commercial cloud resources, that would help. Again, it's an administrative issue that we just haven't managed to work out yet. Some of it's on our end or SPI's end, but much of it is on the cloud provider's end.
So that'd be nice. I agree with you, though. It's like if you are a user on the machine, it's not the same when you are root. So which is why I think it'd be nice if we had our own OpenStack deployment, because we had the full power, the full administrative power to do everything, like add accounts, grant passwords, and such. That'd be maybe nicer for us.
Well, I think there's probably use cases for both, right?
Yeah.
It seems like there are lots of people who might, because of their job or past work, be very familiar with one platform but not the other, and so doing it on OpenStack might take 1 hour, whereas figuring it out on AWS to someone who's not familiar might take 8 hours, or vice versa. So I think that there, in an ideal world, we'd be able to get through the administrative challenges with having all of these tools available for everyone. All right. Next question. Do you have statistics about how many users are using how many instances on what cloud platform? The short answer is no, but I'll let other folks fill in some color, because there are some interesting things known.
Yeah, we can get some information. None of it's complete, so I can speak mostly to our usage on AWS, which is where I'm most familiar. So there are two ways that you can launch a Debian instance on AWS using the images that we register. We get statistics through the if you launch through the AWS marketplace. So we get some fairly high level numbers about like who's running Stretch, who's running Buster, who's running Bullseye, that sort of thing. Or not who, but how many of those are being run, and that sort of thing. And so we can sort of see how quickly those the different releases are being adopted and that sort of thing. But I don't know. What we don't know is what percentage of our users are going through the marketplace entry point at all. If you don't do that and you just run the images that we share directly, that we have listed on the wiki, that are discoverable using the EC2 APIs and things like that, we have no visibility into that. And so it's almost like it's almost like looking at PopCon data. You only see information from the people who have opted into it, basically, and it's just not complete. So we really don't have a lot of information on this, at least on the Amazon EC2 side. If anybody else wants to talk about other stuff, actually, before I hand it over, the other thing that we do have a little bit of access to is by default the EC2 images use the Amazon CloudFront CDN as their archive mirror, and so that gives we get some statistics from that. Like we basically get access logs from that, so we get some idea of how popular things are in EC2.
Okay, for Azure, it's similar, but even more restricted. For the marketplace, we don't get any information. For using the images directory, we don't get any information, but we can get some limited insight by looking at the access logs on the mirrors.
Cool. Thanks, guys. All right. Question 4. Are there automated functional tests of the automatically generated images, or is that all manual? It looks like we have one answer. Yes. Have a look at the Salsa repo. There are some system tests that get run as part of the pipeline. That is correct. I also have a little bit of a project on trying to do more live testing of images that's kind of stalled out. I'll drop the link for that in the Etherpad so that folks can take a look if you're interested.
So one thing that I was talking about just before this BoF privately is that I would like the OpenStack images to be better tested, because unfortunately I managed to break networking just before the Debian bullseye release in the OpenStack images. I don't want this to happen again. And one thing that can happen is just test it on a public cloud already deployed, rather than the approach I had before, which was to deploy a small virtualized OpenStack inside Casualana. So maybe I'll just grant some privileges to run images on a public cloud, and we can go with that. At least that's my plan for the next year.
Let's see. Question 5. Sometimes I would install a Debian instance on a cloud platform and have it keep running. When a new Debian stable is released, I would just update using apt-dist upgrade. Is such usage supported by the cloud team? Yes, definitely. Our images are Debian. You can update them and upgrade them if you like. Lots of people in the cloud follow the pattern Noah was talking about, where they rebuild infrastructure from a fresh image using some sort of automated process. But if your process is to install an image and keep it up to date, that works exactly as you would hope. Question 6, what kind of help do you need? Noah mentioned a couple things. The image finder, we have a promising initial set of features that needs some oomph to kind of get it over the hill into being a really useful tool. You've heard a variety of things we just talked about in terms of doing additional testing on the generated images. We have some, but that could always be better. There are some administrative challenges that Noah mentioned that are related to providing access. So, there's some requests from DSA to have that process use folks' LDAP accounts for Debian, and there's currently a gap in sort of the infrastructure for doing single sign-on with that. So if that's something that you're interested in, there's definitely work that we could benefit from having that that gap filled. I'm sure I'm forgetting things. What else?
Well,
I know one other.
The one thing that we just talked about, the image test framework, like that's something, the tests that we do right now, they're good at testing that we drop the content that we expect into an image, but they never actually launch instances of these images. They never see that the images boot and that they configure themselves properly and all that sort of stuff. So some sort of ongoing functional testing that's actually running the images in a cloud environment, that kind of thing, would be a super cool thing to work on. Like you said, Ross, you've got a project that you've done some work on. Grabbing that and collaborating on that and extending it and making it run on a regular basis, driven by our existing automation and integrated with our existing automation, would be super, super cool.
Another thing that comes to mind, for folks that have followed the cloud team or in the past, you may have noticed the recent release did not include GCE image support. Unfortunately, the package that provides the support for running our cloud images in GCE was RC buggy and did not make it into the new stable release. So if you're interested in GCE and you have some ability to spend some time on improving that packaging, the main challenge that the Google folks have run into is ensuring that it stays up to date enough to be as useful as it needs to be. So that's something that if you check the Debian Cloud mailing list, there's a thread about that within the past few months that has some pointers and some places where you could look to get started, or ask an IRC or on the channel.
Packaging in general is an ongoing amount of work for us. I mentioned earlier in the slides that the cloud providers are updating APIs and the various SDKs that communicate with these on a very regular basis, and so just sort of owning packages and keeping them up to date is something that for the most part they're pretty easy. Like even upstream is the packages are largely automatically generated based on open API specifications and things along those lines. So automating the package maintenance is not super difficult. None of the packages are I shouldn't say none, but a lot of these, the packages that we deal with are not, really sort of maintenance heavy, but they're there, and so just kind of dealing with that and keeping them up to date, dealing with the issue of them in stable and that kind of thing would be very nice to have more people thinking about that.
Somebody on the other part mentioned Terraform. If somebody wants to package Terraform and push it to Debian, I'd be very happy with this.
Terraform's another one of those things that moves super quickly, though, right? Because it's basically trying to keep up with, it's got its core, and then it's got its, sort of service plugins that try to keep up with all of the services. And as a cloud provider launches a new service, there's a revision to that plugin to add support for it. So there's a lot of churn, I guess, in those packages. They move quickly.
That's if you need the very latest fancy feature. Sometimes you just don't. You're just happy with the normal things. Like,
yeah, I mean, sure. Sometimes some people are, but I don't know that I'd want to sort of make that statement as a sort of blanket statement that that's all we ever need to support is some arbitrarily chosen old version.
Okay, I'd be fine with a 2-year-old thing.
And
that's just me then.
If you start to package Terraform itself, you also need to package all the providers, because without it isn't of any use. Mm-hmm. Or otherwise it will just download everything anyway, and you don't get.
So speaking of Terraform, we actually do use Terraform as a team. A lot of our resources within the cloud providers right now are managed using Terraform. So we would potentially benefit directly from having it packaged and kept up to date, because it's a super powerful, useful tool.
The other thing, just looking at IRC, it looks like that question came from asking about having Terraform as a way to address the issue with keeping the cloud API tools up to date. The one thing to note on that question is that the tools that Noah was talking about are not really addressing the same use cases as Terraform. Many times you need some utilities in your VM to handle features that the platform provides, or many times there are command line tools for interacting with the cloud services that are exposed by the provider that are useful during setup when you're trying to build an instance that accomplishes some sort of task. So you kind of have different use cases for those things. It doesn't seem to me like Terraform could cleanly replace many of the things that you need the provider SDKs for. Just to go back to the last question, though, in terms of what else do we need help on? Another thing that came to mind, if you are using Cloud Init and you have a fairly advanced use case, you're not just passing a script or a list of packages, it might be interesting occasionally to have your hands test your config with new versions of Cloud Init. Cloud Init is something that occasionally benefits from a stable update. It's quite difficult to test, and we have run into corner cases on clouds that none of us operate on, where the new version introduces some slightly different behavior that breaks, a non-standard use case. So if that's something that you do, please keep an eye out on our mailing list for new releases of Cloud Init, because your tests would be very valuable to us.
Are we out of time, Stefano?
Yes, I think we're at time. Shall we call it?
Sounds good.
Good. Thanks everybody that came. Thanks for all the questions and that sort of thing. Here, real quick, is our if you can see my screen, some of the contact information and wikis and things. If you're interested in following up on any of those, or helping us out, that would be wonderful. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of DebConf. Thank you.